We're at a funny point in history in some ways in that we're treating young adults younger and younger.
High school students naturally have been told you're not old enough to vote, you don't have the right to drive, you're not a real full person. And that's a real big mistake of our society because young people are so capable, and the more you tell them that they are capable, the more they're able to do.
If you give adolescents a sense that there are real problems in the world, there are issues to be dealt with, but there are ways that you can really make a positive difference and give them tools and real responsibilities to start tackling some of those things, that's incredibly empowering.
I think everybody falls in love with Eleuthera. I had grown up going to the Jersey Shore, and we've always loved the ocean as a family. I think back when I first came, I was a freshman in college, and putting a mask on, it was like the world was a huge aquarium. I felt like I was Jacques Cousteau. Pam came to this place when we were first dating, and I think in some ways fell in love with Eleuthera more than I did. We only wanted to be in a boarding school environment. And the reason was because we wanted to feel like our family extended out into the community. When we started teaching and working at Lawrenceville, we would bring students down here. Programs usually ran about 10 days, and it was primarily just kind of a scuba adventure. The more we explored the different opportunities, the more it became apparent that a much longer program was almost needed, was wanted. And Kevin Mattingly was a mentor because he had just come from spending a decade at the mountain school.
You know, the neat thing about Chris is he is a visionary and a break the mold sort of guy, and how he viewed the importance of getting kids outdoors in authentic experiences, experiencing place, experiencing the natural world, thinking about their relationship to it in different ways, thinking about our impact on it.
So we were working together to figure out ways to break Lawrenceville students out of the four walls of a classroom, and it was just really hard. There's a lot of people that have come to me and said, I want to start a semester program, I want to start school. And I start to think about all the factors that had to line up, like the stars had to be aligned. I think it's true pretty much for anything that gets started from scratch. There's luck involved, there really is. It's that combination of hard work and opportunity that makes something happen.
I think what's interesting about Chris is that he is so articulate about presenting a vision, and he has so much enthusiasm that's so contagious that he's able to bring on board all the people that he needs in order to get done whatever it is he needs to get done.
I think the key forces there were Lawrenceville and then the DeVos family also. I think those two institutions were required to get us moving.
Chris had done a masterful job of winning over Lawrenceville advocates, people who were supporting him.
Chris attracted a lot of talent around him. Proof is in the pudding.
I think Lawrenceville, a little bit, if I'm honest, kind of just looked up and things were happening and they were on the journey.
At Lawrenceville, once a week there was a student meeting. And this student meeting was a faculty meeting, and so normally the students would be dismissed and they would go do homework or have free study time. And Chris and Kevin Mattingly, the science department head at Lawrenceville at the time, he and Chris managed to convince the students that it was a real school meeting while all the faculty were sequestered having their faculty meetings. The students were all together in the auditorium, and Chris got up after Kevin, who said, "You should really consider going to the island school. This will be a transformative experience for you." And there didn't exist an island school at the time. So Chris got up and talked about scuba diving and connecting with the ocean and being in the Bahamas. And for 20 spots, it turned out, it ended up being about 60 applicants.
Once we selected those 20 students, Lawrenceville was in. And when we said we don't have enough money to build buildings, they're like, well, we probably have to get you some more money.
So that theme continued in lots of different arenas, the idea that it was always better to ask for forgiveness than permission.
First time I went to the cave, the school wasn't nothing but a kind of a dream.
It looked like a moonscape. There wasn't a single piece of vegetation anywhere.
The place where the island school is now was a big, bare expanse of blasted rock and dirt with nothing on it at all.
2 weeks before the school opened, we were lugging construction debris off the lot, and my husband and Chris were pushing a huge refrigerator into place, and the toilets hadn't come. They were on a barge. And we had dinner with Chris the night before the first students came, and I looked at him and I said, well, what worries you most? And he said, oh, there's so much.
You arrived on campus and the boys helped assemble their beds. They like put together where they're going to sleep that night. And you would walk around on their big chunks of rock in the middle of it. Was a construction site. And so the students actually, one of the first things they did was move the rocks out of the way and put a path so you could get between the buildings.
In the early years, there was no Deep Creek Middle School. If you look at our outreach program, we work with every primary school in South Eleuthera in the early years. And it was great, like we would, have one-on-one reading time with them. Many of them learned to snorkel, put a mask on their face for the first time. And the question was asked by our board, really, it was like, well, what happens to these kids? You get them all fired up about the environment, about different ways of learning, be more active in their learning process. Where do they go? Well, they go to this high school and they're young. They're only like 11 years old and they're starting high school. And so really the authentic work that young people were doing as mentors for the primary school kids led us to create the middle school. I mean, it had to happen because there was such good sharing happening.
I was running the community outreach, so we got to know principals, and slowly, through some Bahamian folks who are working here, started to talk to people and knock on people's doors and sit in people's living room and ask about education and whether they would consider sending their kids to a school that we wanted to start. And we didn't have any problem filling our spaces. We had, I think, 16 kids in the first year, and we couldn't have fit any more. It was just our second year, I think, of the middle school that we started trying to place kids in boarding schools and find opportunities, even summer camp opportunities. And they have ended up as student prefects, as class leaders, as graduation speakers. Almost everybody has thrived academically and socially. Chris always says the people make the place, so it's not a fancy place, but it's doing fancy stuff. I really think the education there is top-notch.
The Cape Lutheran Institute is a natural outgrowth of what we've been doing all along.
The idea of the Institute was always Chris Maxey's dream, is to have high school students working side by side with university-level students and researchers.
And in the beginning, it was mostly like science teacher and students get together. It's not like we didn't have fancy PhDs running around. But as we did that work and were able to share it, scientists were like, whoa, you guys, these are high school kids?
All right, what else? How else?
I think people lose sight of the fact that being explorers is an innate part of our humanness. And I think the kids here, because they're getting involved in real research projects and they start to realize, wow, you guys don't really know the answer to this question. I could be the one to find the answer. That's a wake-up call.
My research project, we ended up having a null hypothesis. So we were so pissed because all of our high school experience, even middle school, it's always been about working to find the answer. And we didn't accomplish that. But our researcher, he said, no matter what, we've gotten closer to the answer. We can cross something off the list and we can try a different thing. And I think that completely reshaped my paradigm of what not only education is about, but also what is knowledge. It's not about having the solution, because not everything has a perfect, clear-cut answer.
The Institute, the space, the research facility, the wet lab, the dry lab, Hallig, all really grew because we needed a place for the scientists to come and work with our students because they were blown away by what was happening.
I hated school when I was growing up. Fortunately, I loved to learn, but I never equated school with learning. It was just a place to try to stay awake somehow. And it's always bothered me that we're not training kids to deal with the problems that we're leaving them. And I think that that's what the Island School is doing. And it's one of the few places I've found that is doing it.
The work here matters. If you don't do, say, your research homework, then you're kind of messing up not only your group, but you could even mess up the greater scientific community, which is cool because you have a huge responsibility, but you also feel incredibly accomplished when you make something like your research poster.
I think about 5 years in, somewhere around 2003 or 2004, I said to myself, you know what? If for whatever reason all this went away, the lives we've impacted, the people who left here changed, that would have made it all worth it. That would have made it worth it. It's good. Anything on top of that is gravy. That's kind of what I said to myself. And now I realize that to rest on that is not fair because of so much opportunity that would have been left on the table.
I oftentimes quote Kevin Mattingly, and he said this early on. He said, you know, at school, most of the student responsibility is to consume. And at the Island School, the focus is on producing.
A typical classroom back home is just reading out of a book and answering questions, doing busy work. I actually understand things now, and it's just a lot more fun to learn. You don't even realize that you're learning when you're doing it. Like in marine ecology, you go out and do dives, and then you notice that you can actually tell what these species are, and it's really incredible.
And I think a lot of schools, a lot of people in jobs like mine, you know, they feel that kids are going to miss out on too much, you know, like this second semester of pick the discipline. And what we've learned is that with some concerted effort and focus, a kid can miss 100 days of our experience, return after those 100 days, and grow in really important ways and continue to achieve academically in some ways that they probably hadn't anticipated that they would be able to.
I think for me that was a very real fear that I was going to be missing out on things back home, going to be missing out on classes that I wanted to take in high school. But what I learned almost immediately at Island School is that it's so much more valuable, it's so much more real, and I feel like the skills that Island School gave me put me way beyond a lot of my peers.
It's really hard. It's not the normal school journey.
The first week, I was just kind of blown away with how hard it is academically and physically. But now that's something that I've been like most proud of, that I've adjusted to.
You know, John Schatz did a great job starting this last semester, and it was amazing how many kids remembered his statement. When they first arrived here the first night, he's like, my job is to confuse you. You know? Like, how many times do you start on any kind of journey and the message is, you know, we want you to be confused. We want you to be out of your comfort zone, physically, emotionally, intellectually.
It's just this experience where everybody grows together, you know, breaking themselves down, breaking down each other. Everybody sort of is reborn in some aspect in terms of reshaping paradigms or acknowledging something new in their life, whether how profound or mundane it might seem.
You get to know people like in its entirety. You don't just get to know them how they are at school or how they are in like a social setting. I just think I got to know these girls in a way I don't think I'll ever get to know another group of girls in my life.
People have an opportunity to regrow with peers who they never thought they would meet on day one, and then 100 days later they're crying and saying goodbye to each other in the NASA airport.
I don't know, I've become more open here too, so I think that they've helped me to kind of find my voice in a different way than I was unaware of before.
It's pretty amazing how close you become down there.
A lot of young people are not going to leave their comfort and follow something where this person's saying it's going to be really hard. You know, that's not the norm. And so I think there's a self-selection process that has helped us build a community of alumni that are just outstanding people, because you're a risk taker just by signing up. When you think about the people, the young people that are applying right now, some of these essays students write talk about wanting to go to the Island School for 10 years of their life, since they were 5. And I think that's proof that we've created something really powerful, something meaningful for young people.
Chris taps into the existing energy of young people. And so in some ways, Chris represents the teenager aspect of all of us that wants to believe that we're not static, we're not fixed in time, we have the capacity to grow and change.
To me, the secret sauce is so intuitive. You know, it's not rocket science. Like, everybody wants to be respected as a contributor, right? When you actually make a difference, it makes you feel good.
And they need that training and that experience, that feeling of proving to themselves that they can do things and that they have agency, they have the capacity to be valuable to themselves and their community. You can't tell someone that, you have to show them that, you have to let them feel that.